Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining
Hey,
us.
everybody.
Hey, John. It's good to see you. We're here on DeProgram. It's John Kiriakou and me, Ted Rall. It's Wednesday, June 18th. And obviously, we're living in scary times when the Director of National Intelligence indicates that we're teetering on the brink of nuclear annihilation and World War III. That's where we are right now. We are basically Donald Trump has a little angel on his shoulder in the form of Tulsi Gabbard, urging him not to support Israel and bomb Iran. And he has a little devil. He has a lot of little devils, mostly in his cabinet, on his other shoulder, who are urging him to go ahead and drop a 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb on Iran and go all in. And obviously, the president is torn.
Yeah, he was torn, it appears, until about a week ago. He went to the G7 summit in Canada, and word leaked out that he had told all of these other leaders that he was not going to attack Iran. That was followed up with a phone call to each of the foreign ministers from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, reiterating we were not going to attack Iran. And then 24 hours later, Donald Trump started getting a little cute in his comments that, well, you never know, and we control the skies over Iran, which of course we don't. And then he began moving assets. We normally have 30,000 troops on the ground in the Middle East at any given time over the span of 9 bases. He's already upped that to 36,000 troops. We're going to 40,000 troops by the end of the week. He's directed the USS Nimitz to the carrier battle group to steam in from the Indo-Pacific. And he's ordered the USS Carl Vinson, which the Nimitz was going to replace. The Carl Vinson was going to go back to San Diego to remain in the Arabian Sea. And then, taunting Ayatollah Khamenei that we're going to let you live for now, and we're going to use this, bunker buster, 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb to destroy the nuclear program. It's like, look, the Iranians, first of all, are going to retaliate, probably by using terrorism, and they're going to withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and then for sure they'll have a nuclear weapons program. So I just don't get what the end game here is.
A lot of questions. So what happened here, right? I mean, it really seemed, first of all, Donald Trump campaigned against exactly this sort of thing. Not just this time. He's been consistent here ever since 2015 when he came down the golden escalator in Trump Tower. This has been his politics. He's against big, stupid new wars. This is the biggest, stupidest of all wars. Iran, as you and I have talked about, was the one, it's a real country, as Ted Cruz needs to learn, or just recently learned, has 92 million people in it. It has a real military with hundreds of fighter jets, albeit old ones. And we can talk about, Iran's failure to, Israel may not control the skies, but they've had more free range than we should have expected. And we should talk about why that happened. Yeah. But, what changed here? Obviously the president's been pressured by forces internal and external, but why the change of heart? I mean, I'm always, like everybody else, I'm always interested when people start talking about we. When I was in Afghanistan covering the war in 2001, I talked to a reporter from the Washington Post, and she said, "Oh, we've just captured Kunduz." I said, "Who's this we you're talking about?" I didn't join the Northern Alliance. I'm not a soldier. I'm not an Afghan soldier. Who's this we? Oh, you know what I mean. And, it's like, well, I did know what she meant. The U.S. was aligned with the Northern Alliance. The Northern Alliance had captured Kunduz. But when the president starts saying we, he means I'm in with Israel. And so how did that happen so quickly?
Yeah. How did that happen so quickly? Did he take a call from Jared Kushner? Did did Benjamin Netanyahu promise him something that we're just not aware of yet? It doesn't make any sense to me, unless he thinks this is a way to intimidate the Iranians into accepting a nuclear deal that's just not acceptable to them anymore. It's funny to me too. I gave. Say again?
Another Trump bluff. Like to try to force a deal.
Yeah, another Trump bluff. But the thing is he thinks that these bluffs work, that they're strategic, that they force people to the negotiating table, and they don't. All they do is they piss people off. And that's why there was no deal with North Korea at the end of the first Trump administration. And if he thinks that the Iranians are going to react well to a threat of force, especially at the hands of what the Iranians call the Zionist entity and its master, then he's living in a fantasy land. Yeah,
I agree. And then there's the broader question of, first of all, how would this look, right? So the United States blows up, let's say, helps Israel, blows up the nuclear program. I mean, there's going to be consequences. I mean, so first of all, can Iran then reconstitute its nuclear program, now that it's obviously been degraded substantially by Israeli bombing and then U.S. bombing? Can it? I mean, and then how, I guess, is the question. And then obviously they should. They'd be stupid not to. I would. And then if I were them, and then, what are the chances of regime change? I mean, we're hearing that ugly phrase for the first time since the Bush years, like, oh, well, this could topple the regime. I don't see it that way. I think it's more likely to strengthen the regime.
Yet another thing that the president does not understand, and it's not just the president, I blame those around him. And it was the same thing with the Democrats too, and with the Bush people, is when you are an invading and occupying power, you are almost never seen as a liberator, except, Ukrainians believed that the Nazis were liberating them in 1940. Right. But that is almost never the case. You're seen as an occupier and an invader and a country to be resisted at all costs. And this is what I think we're headed for with Iran. The Iranians, whether they love the Ayatollah or they hate the Ayatollah, whether they love or hate the IRGC, they're going to pull together to resist these invaders. Mark my words.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. And I guess, so now, we have a bunch of debates that are, redolent of earlier debates in American history within our lifetimes. At the end of the Vietnam War, Congress pushed through the War Powers Act, which, it's like one of our many laws that was passed with great fanfare and just seems to get routinely ignored. But basically, it was an attempt to reiterate Congress's authority as delineated in the Constitution to declare war and deploy troops for any amount of time. I mean, the Constitution does allow the president to, in a case of an immediate emergency, to deploy troops in a very limited way. But to actually go to war for any kind of sustained period, that's supposed to be the purview of Congress. Yet we've had countless wars, for example, since 1941. But 1941 is the last time that Congress declared war. I mean, hard to believe, right? We didn't, Congress didn't declare Korea or Vietnam or Iraq or Panama or Grenada, and I can go on and on. We have senators who are scrambling to pass sort of a War Powers Act 2.0, bigger and better. We'll pay attention this time. Mm-hmm. It seems like this has some meat on the bones, and it might get some bipartisan support.
I think it is. Rand Paul said that he's all in, and then you've got you've got Mark Warner, the chairman, the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine's actually the major sponsor, along with Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. So you're right. There are a lot of libertarian Republicans who are just saying, "Whoa, Nelly, wait 1 second. Nobody's even asked Congress to authorize a war, let alone to talk about using bunker buster bombs and B-2s and B-52s." And this was another thing that was interesting to me. I read this in the Washington Post today, and I want to say this before we switch to Ted Cruz, because I know a lot of us want to talk about Ted Cruz, but we have B-52s in Diego Garcia, which is an island in the Indian Ocean or the Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea area that the British occupy, and they depopulated it forcibly to turn the entire island into a military base, which of course the United States uses. So we have B-52s there. And the reason that's important is that the B-52 is not strong enough to carry a bunker buster bomb. I just learned this today. The bunker buster, each one weighs 30,000 pounds. And so you need a B-2 stealth bomber, long-range bomber, to carry the bunker buster. The B-2 is based in Missouri, and it's going to have to be refueled twice on the way over. It drops the bombs, and twice on the way back, which is a 30-hour nonstop flight. So if anybody in Missouri happens to see these B-2s take off, you know it's on.
So let me explain for people who don't really understand. So about bombs, right? So I was a physics major before they wisely threw me out of engineering school. And so bombs are, the explosive load is, the explosive power of them is exponentially based on their weight. So the standard bomb in the US arsenal is 400 pounds or 800 pounds, right? That's like they call those dumb bombs, the kinds that you just throw them out of the plane. You kind of like they land wherever. They're not guided. And that's like the vast majority of bombs that are used in places traditionally like Gaza. Now they're more guided, but at the beginning of the war, an 800-pound bomb is not twice as powerful as a 400-pound bomb. It's 4 times more powerful. A 1,200-pound bomb would be 3 times more powerful, and so on. And so a 30,000-pound bomb, I think the best way to compare it to, it's like a mini nuclear bomb. I was, again,
yes.
Afghanistan story. So I was in Talokan in late November, early December of 2001. And one of those was used, I don't know why, but it was used against this tiny bridge, not about 20 miles, well, actually 26 miles west of Talokan. And I didn't know what had happened. I was sleeping in the middle of the night. The ground starts shaking, and dogs start barking, and there's like a blast of air, and windows broke. Windows that had survived, years of conflict there, right? And because this is it was 2001. Most of Afghanistan had been destroyed, and then. So the next morning I went and talked to another reporter who was staying at a nearby guest house, and she informed me that one of these BLU-82 bunker busters had been dropped on a target 26 miles to the west. And I was like, wait, what? You mean 2.6 miles? She's like, no, 26 miles. And I'm like, but I thought it was an earthquake until I felt the blast of air, or I thought it was a nuclear weapon or something. I didn't know. You have no news, you have no radio. So the whole area had been, everything for a half-mile radius was dead, right? Completely leveled, and it sucks up all the oxygen, all the air in that area. So even if you're not like at the blast center, at the center, you're going to die because there's not going to be air for like 3, 4, 5 minutes.
It collapses your lungs.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it collapses your lungs.
Every animal was dead too. Hundreds of villagers, all Northern Alliance. It was a Northern Alliance controlled village too, stupidly. But the point is the level of damage is hard to really appreciate, from TV or, when they just talk about like, what is it? There's nothing like it, There's very few things like it. It's like the end of the world.
It's like the end of the world. This thing, because of its sheer weight, it can. Well, it's kind of a fallacy to say that it can burrow, but this is burrowing is akin to what it does because it's so big and so heavy. It can burrow down and explode deep enough to destroy something that is protected to 300 feet. Now, the main Iranian nuclear facility is at 300 feet. And the non-bunker busters, the big ones, the 5,000 pound bombs that the Israelis have, can get down to about 200 feet. This is the only thing that can totally destroy this facility. But again,
need to work.
Then what do you do? Because the Iranians are just going to rebuild, probably doubly so because they're going to be so angry. I would probably bet money that the Pakistanis help them, the Iranians help them, and once everybody is certain that the Iranians have the North Koreans will help them. Once everybody's certain that the Iranians have a bomb, then the Saudis are going to announce their bomb. So this is just there's no good news in this issue. None.
Before we get to Senator Cruz and his geography lesson, let's talk a little bit about Iran's stockpile. So Iran is basically in the game as long as they have long-range missiles, right? So the rumor on mainstream media is that they have about 2,000, long to medium range ballistic missiles. You don't have to be a math genius like Ted Cruz to count and see that, like, hey, if this goes on for a few more weeks, they'll all be gone. They're sending out about 100 or so or more sometimes every night towards Tel Aviv. Is that true? Do you think they might have more than that? And then what?
Well, I heard that, and I did some research today to try to pin it down. It's not exactly so clear cut that the Iranians are running out of ICBMs. What is more clear is that the Israelis have destroyed 1/3 of Iran's launchers. So it may be that they just can't get them loaded and launched quickly enough. And that's why we're seeing fewer on their way to Israel.
Is it game over when they run out? If and when they run out?
Yeah, I think it is.
Because this is a ground war. I mean, it's not.
Keep in mind too that the Israelis are very happy. Yeah, and keep in mind that the Israelis are very happy to commit war crimes by targeting the civilian infrastructure, just like the U.S. did in Iraq in 2003. They've already destroyed Tehran's water treatment facilities. They're going after electrical grids and gas facilities. They're gonna destroy the civilian infrastructure so that the Iranians are going to be set back years.
And of course, it does look like the president of the United States is fully, he's totally vested here. We kind of talked about this, but I've thought about it more since the last time we talked about it. And I do think that a lot of Trump's calculus is he just likes to win. It's sort of like how you go to the baseball stadium. When a team is losing, nobody's there. The seats are cheap. When they're on a winning streak, all the fans are there. I think Trump didn't expect the Israelis to do so well early on, and then he's like, oh, I want me part of that. I want to be in. I want to be able to say that I won. I mean, I don't think he has any understanding of it's the long run that matters more.
Marble has a very good question. How did 200 jets enter Iran unscathed? The Israelis, Marble, have been working on that for years. And so one of the things that they've been very good at is identifying the locations of Iranian radar installations. And they destroyed many of those in the very first wave. And don't forget that they are violating Jordanian and Iraqi airspace. So they're coming in from the north. They're working with the Saudis and the Bahrainis and the Emiratis to enter from the northwest, the west, and the southwest. They're just overwhelming the Iranian air defenses. The Iranians can't keep up, and certainly can't keep up over the long term.
So, I mean, so basically Iran is outmatched here militarily.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Are.
I mean, I think it is fair.
They are, but see, that's where the Israeli mistake and the American mistake is going to be, Ted. It's easy to see Iran as some third world country. They're poor, they're backward. The sanctions have crippled them over the last 47 years, 46 years. And that's not exactly true. I mean, sure, they lack for a lot of things. Yes, the Israelis have had military successes, but the Iranian people, while not nationalists, like so many of the rest of us are still patriots. And they're going to fight this thing until the bitter end.
I believe that. I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, so you can bomb the shit out of a society, but can you really defeat them unless they own it? And I kind of think you can't. You can just leave them damaged and harmed. I mean, the goal here is regime change, right? Now, I don't believe that an aerial war will ever accomplish that here or anywhere else. It just basically doesn't work. But let's just say for the intellectual brain exercise, okay, let's just see. I mean, do you think the Israelis or even the United States has given any thought to what would follow? I mean, we did regime change in Iraq. It was a catastrophe. We had no plans for what would come in next. I don't know. We listened to Ahmed Shalabi and we thought that, we would be greeted as liberators. Basically, Iran owns and operates Iraq ever since. And then ISIS came into Western Iraq. Afghanistan, we had no plans for what would come next. We installed a puppet, didn't do any good. Mm-hmm. Now we're right back where we started. Libya, probably the most catastrophic of all. Got rid of Muammar Gaddafi, the most literate, successful society really in that part of the world, in all of Africa, and reduced it to a failed state where they had slave markets. Syria, it's a shithole now, ever since we got rid of Assad. What are they? Do you think they've learned? And I mean, I'm sorry. Do you think they've learned anything at all?
No. And that's because of the neoliberal, neoconservative agenda. It's this overwhelming, irrational belief that not only are we the good guys, but it is our duty to impose our culture, our politics, and our beliefs on the rest of the world, whether they realize they want it or not. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I've told you the story, Ted, of being George Tenet's note taker the night before the invasion of Iraq in a principals committee meeting, where General Tommy Franks, the commander of CENTCOM, said, and these were his exact words, and this was in February of 2003. If all goes as planned, we can be in Tehran by August. We all know what Wesley Clark said. 7 countries in 5 years or whatever the time length was. We were going to attack Iran, Iraq, Libya, Syria, North Korea, all these different places, and they were just going to fall one right after the other. And that's just not real life. That's not the way it ever works out. I told you also that this knucklehead on the National Security Council, who was participating in that meeting. At the very end of the meeting, when all the principals were getting up to walk away, he said, the minute we cross that border, they're going to throw flowers at us. And I said to my boss afterwards, do they know nothing about history? And he said, no, they know nothing about history. That's what it's come down to.
I read a really interesting piece. I think it was in the New York Times many, many years after the Iraq War had turned into a fiasco.
Yeah.
And it was a reminiscence of the very first unit to arrive at the very first Iraqi village. And they had been told, this is a Shia village who've been oppressed by Saddam. And everybody there is going to be, this will surely be a nice start to the war because everybody there is going to be happy to see us.
Yeah.
And instead, everybody down to little boys were shooting like mofos at the American troops. They couldn't get over it. And they said, and the Fedayeen were all over the place. And they were just like, but this is supposed to be, the easy
friendly village.
Yeah, this is the friendly village. It's all downhill from here, and it never got better. I mean, it's that whole. I mean, it's. I don't know. It's just so bizarre. You have this giant infrastructure of intelligence agencies, and the military itself, who collect massive amounts of data, have tons of analysts, historians, people like you. Who their job is to figure out what is likely to happen, and they rely in part on history, and in large part. And we know what happens in history. Nobody likes to be invaded. Everybody's afraid of the invader and assumes that they're there to rape their wives and kill them and steal their shit. And they're not usually wrong about that. And so people, they fight back. That's just what always happens. And so why would we ever think that it would ever be any different?
You keep doing the same thing and hope for a different outcome. It just makes no sense at all. No sense at all. But let me ask you a question. In March of this year, Tulsi Gabbard testified in open session before the Senate Intelligence Committee. And she said that it was the consensus of the entire U.S. Intelligence Committee that the Iranians were not seeking a nuclear bomb, they were not building one, and they did not have an active program to enrich uranium for the purpose of using in a nuclear weapon. That was in March. Donald Trump said yesterday and 3 days ago, I don't care what she said. So why have 18 or 17, however many we have, intelligence agencies? Why have a director of national intelligence? Why request a national intelligence estimate from your top analysts if you're just going to pretend that they don't know what the heck they're talking about?
Well, basically, and part of what the coda to what Trump said, right, John, was, we're, I think they were very close. You thought.
Based on what?
Basically, from all those times that you visited Iran and all those times that you hung out with Iranian nuclear scientists and you listened to their phone calls. Like, I thought, like, come on. I mean, it's basically like, obviously a little bird named Bibi has been singing in his ear. And, it's a disaster. I mean, if I were Donald Trump, had Donald Trump's ear, I would really say to him, listen, Donald, I hear what you're saying, but don't you feel like you're getting the hard sale here from the Israelis? Like Bibi's doing this on his schedule.
Yeah.
He needs Gaza off the front pages of the newspapers. He needs Israel not to be considered a global pariah for committing genocide in Gaza. And he is trying to avoid all the domestic opprobrium that's coming from the fact that he didn't bring the hostages home and he didn't defeat Hamas. He doesn't seem to know how to defeat Hamas or bring the hostages home, or he may not care, which is my personal belief there. This is about him. And it's not about you. It's like, what does this do for you, Donald Trump? I'm going to suspect not much. And
not much.
The grifter is
67%. 67% of Americans. 67% of Americans oppose war with Iran.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
And when you consider all the anti-Iranian propaganda that's happened, John, what do you make of the fact that there's been so little attempt to sell this war to the American people? We both remember the run-up to the Iraq War. Again, Afghanistan, I promise that's my last Afghanistan reference in this show. But in December of 2001, I saw an American APC in Afghanistan that said, next stop, Baghdad. It was already like in the works, right? In December of 2001. We went in March of 2003. All of 2002 was spent ginning up support for invading Iraq, in Congress and in the press. And, we had the whole Judy Miller stuff and all that stuff. But it was a concerted push on the part of both Republican and Democratic aligned media to go for this. Now we don't have anything like that at all. To the contrary, Donald Trump's not on the air saying, Iran, they're bad people, they're doing bad things to the Israelis, they're anti-Semites, they support terrorism. There's none of that, right? Now, to the contrary, he's just saying, well, I'll let you know what I decide.
Yeah.
Now, historically, no war succeeds without the popular support of the people. I mean, not only at the beginning, but certainly sustained. And, with Iraq, it wasn't sustained. When the WMDs didn't turn up, that was kind of the beginning of the end. But you have to at least start out that way. There's no chance without it. What do you make of that? Is Trump just lazy? He doesn't want to do the work of propagandizing? Or is this just like a bluff? And like we talked about, like he's just trying to bully the Iranians into a deal?
Well, I lean toward that latter position. Because you're right, there is no propagandization going on. We're not telling lies in front of the UN Security Council about how dangerous the Iranians are to us and to world peace. He's not lobbying on Capitol Hill. One of our viewers said, didn't Thomas Massie sponsor something? Wasn't Thomas Massie to bring all this to Congress for a vote? He's written a resolution, but that doesn't mean that the Speaker of the House will allow it to even come out of committee for a vote.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, if it comes out of committee for a vote, it probably will lose, just because there are so many pro-war Democrats out there that they may pair with neocon Republicans and push it. But I think that this is actually a bluff. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. I'm going to say that it's a bluff because we have not seen the preparation. We don't have the troop strength in the area to do anything. The Israelis have been surprisingly candid in saying that they can only do this for 2 weeks, and then they're going to have to pause because they're going to be out of missiles.
So wait, so the Israelis and the Iranians are on a similar timeline?
Yeah, 2 weeks. Crazy.
That's hilarious. I mean, I'm
Crazy.
Sorry, except for all the hundreds of people being killed.
And I think that Donald Trump genuinely overestimates his persuasiveness. He thinks that he can bully people into taking a deal that he wants them to take. And he underestimates Iranian resolve.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like I don't see how Iranians of any stripe could possibly support caving into the Israelis. And the U.S. also, I don't see how it's a good look for the U.S. I know it's a wag the dog scenario, this tiny little country,
Right.
Ordering us around. But I mean, how does it? I mean, it's a bad look for us, right? I mean, Donald Trump's trying. I mean, he's interested. How does this play into his machismo, right? I mean, it's just sort of. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't really.
Well, and there's another thing too, Ted. When I was at the CIA, during the first Gulf War and the Afghanistan War and the Iraq War, there was this thing that the State Department did from the get-go called burden sharing. So it was like we would get hundreds of cables every single day from American embassies all around the world saying, we approached XYZ government and we asked them to pitch in 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, a billion, from the Kuwaitis, 5 billion from the Saudis to pay for all this, because this is very, very expensive. It costs many millions of dollars a day just to keep all these assets in the region. There's no indication that we've approached any governments on burden sharing. There's no indication that envoys are jetting around the world. Say again?
No coalition of the willing.
No, exactly. There's no coalition of the willing. You have foreign ministers from our closest allies telling Marco Rubio, you guys are nuts. We're not going to help you do this. Although, to a lesser extent, there was a report in the LA Times today saying that the U.S. has been using its fighters. The U.S. has been using its fighters to shoot down Iranian ballistic missiles. And these fighters are coming from Spain, Germany, Italy, and Greece, which is probably true. But with that said, this is something that we're going to have to go it alone or go it with the Israelis, which is not a positive thing. And then what? Right. What, we're just supposed to all by ourselves, invade Iran at a cost of what? It's going to take 1 million soldiers. The country is absolutely enormous. It has how many people, Ted?
92 million.
92 million people. Yeah, this isn't going to work.
No, I remember the first time I thought about going to Iran, I was coming. Oh, I lied. Fourth reference to Afghanistan. It's coming from Afghanistan, from Herat, and I was going to take the bus across Iran. Iran is more north-south than east-west. I was going to go east-west, and that was going to be a 5-day bus ride all the way across. And I was like, wait, what? It's like 24 hours. And I'm like, oh, it stops all the time, right? Not really. It doesn't stop that much. It just goes and goes. Iran's a big country. It's like the Mercator projection is a bitch. You don't realize how big those countries are the further south they are.
That's right.
And so I was like, whoa. And I was like, oh, the roads must be really bad. Not really. The roads are pretty good. The bus hauls. It's just big. And it's like when you realize that, and not to mention also mountainous, right? It's like there's
very mountainous
there.
Yeah. The Iranians during the Shah, at least, I'm sure it's probably still the case, they were avid skiers because there are a lot of ski places there. Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny because I've seen pictures of like women in their chadors skiing there, which is also very funny. I'm glad that you mentioned the Shah. So yesterday I'm watching Fox News, and I watch it so others don't have to. And Lindsey Graham's on there, your reliable neoconservative shitheel, and he said, we want Iran to be free the way they were before 1979, restore their freedom. I'm like, under the Shah, under the Shah. I mean, under Savak and the torture prisons in Tehran and brutal regime, like that we installed after.
That's right.
In 1953, after we overthrew the democratically elected President Mossadegh. Wow. I mean, but they're so ahistorical. I've got to think Lindsey Graham knows about that. John, Ted Cruz has a reputation of being one of the more erudite members of the United States Senate. Or
went to Harvard.
He used to have that reputation. He was a great, I love to say this, he was a master debater. But on Tucker yesterday, he sounded more just like a masturbator. He didn't sound good, did he?
No, he sounded like a petulant child, and Tucker ran intellectual rings around him. I was very, very interested. It was so much fun to watch. They started off, it's funny because it was as though Cruz kind of knew it was coming, but still wasn't prepared to deal with it. And he started off by saying, Tucker, you and I probably agree on 80% of the issues. And Tucker said, absolutely true. We probably do agree on 80% of the issues. And Tucker says, in fact, I supported your reelection last time. And he said, yes, you did. And I appreciate that. And then they went to war, just like that.
Oh, man.
Just like that. Tucker said, you have been saying on television and on the floor of the Senate that we need to overthrow the Iranian government. I mean, do you know anything about Iran? For example, do you know the population of Iran? And he didn't have any idea what the population of Iran was. He immediately became defensive, and Tucker went in for the kill. It was dramatic.
It's not. First of all, never. I would love to be interviewed by Tucker, and I would never show up unprepared. But I've got to say, that sounds like it might be a gotcha question, right? To Americans, sure. Americans are a little bit, geography impaired. We don't get and all that. But that said, okay, first of all, you're a United States senator. You should know these things. And then also, I wrote in on a lorry, fifth reference to Afghanistan. Man, I'm such a liar today. With a guy from the UK Independent, and we were like bouncing along and watching the refugees walk by, and he said, you Americans, you should have a rule about your wars. And I said, what rule is that? He said, if the average American can't name 3 cities in a country, you're not allowed to invade. And I said, dude, we couldn't invade Canada if we had a rule like that.
It's true. It's true. I don't know about you, but on TikTok, as I'm laying in bed at night, I'm flipping through videos, and there's always this kid standing in Times Square or on Hollywood Boulevard asking random people walking by, what state is directly south of North Dakota? And they're like, the Great Wall of China.
Oh, my God.
Or Panama Canal. It's embarrassing, and it's just video after video after video.
Yesterday, I saw something like that where a guy was like, he didn't look like he'd been swallowing his own tongue or anything, and he said the 20th century. I don't know when that was.
Exactly.
I know that, I know that these kind of questions were used to keep Black people from voting, but I mean, I'm kind of in favor of some of those questions. I kind of think if you don't know when the 20th century was, I'm not sure I want you to be able to vote.
If you don't know how many states there are, I'm shocked at the number of people that say 52. I'm shocked by it. Or when was the American Revolution? I watched this one today. When was the American Revolution? And the first response was, I knew you was going to ask me some of that history shit. And then she said, 1965.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. But Ted Cruz to get
a really easy question right now, because we're about to enter the 250th anniversary.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, technically, this is the 200th anniversary now, right? So,
right. But to get back to your initial Ted Cruz point, this is a guy that went to Harvard and Harvard Law School. This is a guy who would be leading the efforts on Capitol Hill to push for, to approve, authorize, and appropriate funds for a war with Iran. And he doesn't have the foggiest idea how many people are there. Like if you're a senior member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Secretary of Defense are going to come to you in your official position to say that they need X number of troops, X number of planes, X number of ships, and you have zero reference because you don't have any idea how many people live in Iran, then you have no business in that position.
And has he ever been to Iran? Almost
Never.
certainly not, right?
Never.
I mean, and here's the other thing, John, right? Millions and millions of Americans have been to Iran. Mm-hmm. I'm one of them. There's Iranians who spent decades of their life who are now Americans. You could talk to them. You could say, hey, what do you think? What do you think people will say? There are millions of Americans who have family in Iran who they talk to every single day. Right now, they're on WhatsApp, if WhatsApp is still on. and they can talk to them. I mean, it is kind of amazing that there's this lack of information. I remember I was on with Bill O'Reilly back in the day, and he was going on and on and on about the Afghan people. They really want this, they want that, they want democracy,
What?
they want a free press. And I was like, he wouldn't stop. And I was like, I just gotten back a couple days earlier, and I'm like, have you been, Bill, to Afghanistan? Well, no. And I was like, so how do you know what the people of Afghanistan want? I mean, there were 28 million of them at the time. I knew that population. And I was like, I don't purport to know what all the people of Afghanistan want. It's a big, diverse country. How do you know? Well, that's what everyone wants. I was like, I don't actually think that's true. I was like, at the time, I think Afghans want law and order, and they want roads, and they want to be able to pay, feed themselves. That's probably comes first before they care about the newspaper. I'm just guessing. But it's really crazy. I gotta say, the thing about our colonialism and our imperialism is directly derived from the Brits, but we didn't learn from the Brits. I mean, the Brits used to go and live there. They brought their families with them. They stayed there. It still didn't work because they still didn't connect with the locals, and they were still there to oppress them and rape their land. But but at least they felt like with the Brits, it was like they wrote and read books about every detail of the countries that they were occupying. They knew their economies, they knew their histories, they knew their culture. They worked hard to figure it out as much as they could. We have no such compulsion, right? We just we'll throw some bombs at them and hope for the best.
Yeah, and then you find some occupation governor to go over there and serve a 9-month tour, and then you cycle out military and CIA people 6 months at a time. Nobody takes it seriously.
Parachute them in, and the media doesn't know shit either.
No.
This seventh reference to Afghanistan. I remember sitting with the same reporter I talked about earlier, and there was an Asian-looking guy walking in the street, and she goes, and this was a woman from the Washington Post, so not a slouch. And she goes, "Well, why on earth is there, a Chinese guy here?" I go, "He's not Chinese, he's Uyghur." And she goes, "How do you, what's that?" And I was like, "Why would they be here?" I'm like, "Oh, well, some of them came here to train with the Taliban to fight the Chinese in Western China." And she's like, "How did they get here?" I'm like, "Afghanistan borders China."
Oh my God.
And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "You didn't look at a map before you flew over here?"
Oh my God.
And they just get parachuted in. I mean, it's really depressing. I mean, really, truly. We're not getting good information at all.
No. Listen, just as an aside, I met a Fox News reporter, a young, very good-looking blonde, last week that didn't know Luxembourg was a country. She asked me, Luxembourg, like Luxemburger, is that some kind of sandwich or something? Or did you make that up?
Oh.
And I looked at her like, what? I said, no, it's a country, an actual country.
Yeah, it's a real country. Not a big country, but a country.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's amazing. Okay, well, so our next show is scheduled for Saturday. We may do an earlier one if something comes up.
Yeah.
We're kind of working on something that you and I both know about, and I'm very excited about, and I hope it'll happen soon.
Yeah.
Before we leave this and move on to the situation with the Big Beautiful Bill Act, it just rolls off the tongue.
It's I'm embarrassed to even say it.
It's absurd. What do you? So where are we going to be here? I mean, so basically, this is a game of chicken, right? Whoever keeps their ICBMs the longest wins. Is that basically it? And then I guess the question is, where does Trump come down? The Wall Street Journal, which has consistently had strong reporting on this, is saying that Trump has already okayed. Basically, he's given the okay to prepare an attack against Iran, but he hasn't given. Basically, it's like, get ready. And when I give the heads up, you can go. That's not a go. That's not a.
That's not a go. That's not a go.
That happens all the time, and often nothing happens, right? That could just be more posturing for the benefit of the Iranians. I don't think the Iranians are coming back to the negotiating table anytime soon, though, right? I mean, why would they?
Totally agree. Totally. Ayatollah Khamenei ruled that out yesterday, just hands down. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. I want to add something. I know we're going to switch to the big, beautiful bill in a minute, but I happen to be in Iceland. I don't know if you can. You can't really see out my window. I'm right at the port. But anyway, I'm in Iceland, and so I'm flipping through the channels today, and on all of the Icelandic channels, there are fundraising advertisements for emergency food shipments to Yemen. Not just on one channel and not just one advertisement. There are multiple advertisements and they're on every single channel. And I was thinking, wow, what a great idea this is. And they're showing, starving children and malnourishment, and there's no clean water, and it's been 40 years of fighting. And then I thought, why don't we have these commercials in the United States? Because the United States doesn't give a shit about starving children, whether they happen to be in Yemen or Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere else.
Or in the United States.
Or even in the United States. You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Don't give a shit.
We've got a $1 trillion defense budget. Defense. We should have never changed the name from the War Department to the Defense Department. But
we ought not to.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, and it's part of the reason I like travel, is you get that perspective. You see how other people do things.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? Let's move over to the big beautiful bill. Looks like it's in trouble in the Senate. It's not exactly shocking. There was a lot to not recommend it, and mainly it's a combination of deficit hawks and too many cooks in the same kitchen.
That's it.
And I think so. I don't think this thing is going to pass.
I don't think so either. I think that Donald Trump yet again underestimated the independence of individual senators. They like to think that they should all be president. They like to think that they know better than everybody else. And in this case, I think a lot of them do know better. And I think that Donald Trump thinks that, like, in the House, you can just threaten and cajole and bully and people will fall into place. Remember, the Big Beautiful Bill Act passed the House by one single vote.
Right.
It's going to be a lot tougher in the Senate.
And some of those votes who voted to pass it would not vote for it now.
That's right.
Taylor Greene had major regrets. By the way, this is the world we're in. I pointed it out before. I'll point it out again. Marjorie Taylor Greene is literally messaging like one of the most sane, rational members of the United States Congress.
Dude, I'm ashamed that I'm like, yeah, go Marjorie.
Yeah.
I can't believe she's right on this issue. She's just right.
She's just saying that, like, particularly, that while we're ignoring that Trump was not elected to deal with the Iranians, he was elected to deal with the border and inflation, and that's true. And
yes.
And I think at the same time, there's just no appetite for this certainly among Democrats.
That's
but
right.
Ironically, I think there might be more appetite for the warmongering among Democrats. The
Adam Schiffs of the world, they love this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And they really buy this whole idea of Iran as an existential threat to Israel. It's like
that sounds like an Israel problem to me, not an America problem.
That's how I
just don't get it.
Yeah, and I don't even really truly believe it's an Israel problem. I don't think there's any problem at all. I think they're just making it up. I think Iran has no interest whatsoever they're into resisting Israel and through their proxies and everything. But they don't want to destroy Israel. They don't want to nuke Israel. They don't want to kill all the people who live there. They just don't want to. It's not. They have a lot of reasons not to, and they don't want to. It's just there's no reason. There's no evidence at all that that's what they're on about.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this big beautiful bill in the Senate is running into non-foreign policy problems too. There are a lot of differing opinions on taxation, for example. There are a lot of differing opinions on tax credits for clean energy. Like, why would you be opposed to clean? I don't get it.
I don't get it. There's money to be made. People always, when you have a disruptive technology, right? Like clean energy is not like no energy. It's a replacement of, the biggest investors in clean energy are companies like ExxonMobil and BP. They're into it, right? These are energy companies. Whatever the energy is, whether it comes out of the ground or if it comes from the sun or from the ocean, they don't care. They're on it. They're going to be part of it. And there's a lot more money in building and creating a entirely new infrastructure of charging stations and so on than there is in just keeping the old one going and just maintaining the gas stations.
That's right. This just makes no sense to me. But my point is, if you take these individual news interviews with individual senators from over the past week, every one of the Republicans who says that they are at present a no vote on the big beautiful bill is a no vote for a completely different reason. And to me, that just dooms the whole thing. Remember, the system that we have is the House passes a version, the Senate passes a version. Almost never are the two versions the same. And so
they go to reconciliation.
They go to reconciliation in something called conference committee, where you've got 10 senators and 10 House members, X number of Republicans and X number of Democrats in each thing. They hash it out. It goes back to both houses, and they have to vote on the whole thing all over again before it then goes to the president for his signature. So this is by no means a done deal. Not yet, anyway.
This would have been probably the only major legislative achievement of this presidency.
Yeah, right.
Basically the equivalent of the Build Back Better bill under Biden. That's pretty much the only thing Biden got done. And so Trump is in danger. Sorry, Mr. President, and we know you watch the show, of maybe not achieving as much as Joe Biden.
Ouch. Oh my God. Hey, I want to ask you, I know we're running out of time. I wanted to ask your opinion on something. So I recently was speaking with a friend of mine who happens to be at the White House in a relatively senior position. It's a deputy position. And he said that the scuttlebutt is that Pete Hegseth is just not the guy for DOD, and that he'll likely resign at about the 1 year.
That wasn't classified information, John.
Right. So he'll likely resign around the 1 year mark. This is what they're anticipating. Well, this was a week ago. So this was just days before the Iran thing started. That the conventional wisdom inside the White House was that Tulsi Gabbard would then become the Secretary of Defense. Well, now you've got the president openly and in a hostile form criticizing the work that Tulsi Gabbard is doing as the head of all of America's intelligence services. How do you see this going?
I think Tulsi's in deep trouble. I think she has a target on her back. Look, it was always kind of a surprisingly great fit. I was so happy when she was chosen. I just thought that gave me some hope. Her and RFK Jr. were my favorite picks for the administration. And so, but I always thought she was going to have a hard road to climb. The other day, there was a big meeting about what to do about Iran at the White House with some principals. She was frozen out. She was iced out, not invited. You know, anyone who's ever held a job where there's a meeting that you're supposed to be invited to and you're not there, you know that's not good. Now, technically, she was on National Guard duty, right? I hope she wasn't like beating up pro-migrant protesters in LA or anything like that. I'm assuming she doesn't do that. But still, she was supposed to be invited to this meeting, and she wasn't. So I think Tulsi would have been a fantastic pick for DOD to replace Pete Hegseth. And, you know, people in Trump world, it's not like always like a perfect trajectory where they rise and they fall and then they're gone. People, like Hegseth had, he was considered doomed. Then he was considered to have survived. Now he's in trouble again. It's like Trump world is dangerous. You don't have to do a lot to end up becoming a target.
That's right. They don't just spit you right out.
I suspect, though, we're going to end up with some grade A neocon asshole to replace him, and we're going to miss Pete Hegseth and what a incredibly competent, intelligent, experienced man he was. I think this is only going to be downhill.
I hate to say, I think so too. Real quickly, we have a couple of questions and comments. Do I think the reports of the Iranians planning to assassinate Trump are true? No, I don't think they're true. I think that it could have been, 6 guys sitting around a conference room table in Tehran saying, man, we should assassinate Trump. And somebody then said, yeah, he killed General Soleimani. We should kill Trump. And then nothing came of it. So no, I don't think there was any active, plan, program to go out there and assassinate Donald Trump.
Let's flip this around, John. What about the reports that the U.S., that Trump was saying, we we can assassinate the Ayatollah Khamenei?
Yeah, I interviewed Mohammed Marandi yesterday for my other podcast, Deep Focus, and we talked about this after the filming was done, and Mohammed made a good point. Ayatollah Khamenei has never owned a cell phone, never. He doesn't use
hopefully
email.
Not a pager either.
Oh yeah, not a pager. He's a very old man. He's not a tech guy, and he's got a staff that does that for him. He's got a Twitter page or an X page, but that's not really him. It's people writing for him. He approves the tweet, and then it goes out. So it's not like we're tracking his cell phone or tracking his email usage and geolocating him. So no, I think he's more easily comparable to Saddam Hussein, who also didn't use an email or a cell phone or any electronics and was very hard to find. I don't think Trump has a beat on him. No.
And Bin Laden too, right?
Same with Bin Laden.
Bin Laden used runners, right?
That's right. Which we tried hard to track down and never could. Never could.
So smart though.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
And what are the extent of Tulsi's power? That's a really good question and an important one. Tulsi actually is far, far weaker than the CIA director, John Ratcliffe. Tulsi's real authority.
She's not his boss.
She's not his boss. It's a dotted line between each other. Her real authority is the budget. It's the budget for the entire intelligence community. Now, in order to make ODNI more powerful, during the Biden administration, they transferred the president's daily brief staff, the PDB staff, to the DNI. So it no longer sits at CIA, it sits at DNI, which I think was a mistake, but that's just me. And they also moved organizations like, they call it Russia House, Iran House, or Persia House is what they call it. So there's supposed to be these fusion centers where people from all the different intelligence agencies come together and try to come up with some kind of intelligence program against our enemies. But she doesn't run the day-to-day operations of those organizations. It's really all about the budget. That's what it comes down to.
Which is, in bureaucracy, is powerful.
It's important.
But times like this doesn't really matter that much when it's about who's most powerful at the table. Donald Trump, this is, speculation, but Donald Trump was burned by the neocons in his first term. He didn't trust them before he came in his first term, yet he hired them, and
he hired them,
and then
still humors them, which I just simply don't understand.
That's my question.
I whack them.
President Paul doesn't appoint any neocons.
Right. There's
this doesn't do with that either. Like
there's a debate right now within the Republican Party that is Donald Trump dividing MAGA, number one, or is MAGA whatever Trump tells us it is?
Mm-hmm.
That's the real argument. And I can't believe the words are going to come out of my mouth again. I think that Marjorie Taylor Greene is right, that MAGA is its own standalone ideology. It's nationalist. It's anti-interventionist. And you can't just change your mind day to day over what its ideology is going to be. You just can't.
Right. And I think that, in something that I don't have usually, but sympathy for Donald Trump, he's the head of a neatly divided, nearly 50-50 party coalition between that nationalist Pat Buchanan, America First strain that goes back, really at least 100 years in American history.
Yes.
The other day I saw a quote from Trump where he said, I invented America First, and I tweeted out a picture of my political button from Woodrow Wilson that says, Woodrow Wilson, America First. I have the receipts. I know that's just not true. But he was, but he has that coalition. He has to deal with those people. But he also has the OG, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, neocon-infested Republican Party that itself used to be a coalition between corporatists and country club Republicans, and there used to be liberal Republicans, but they are no more. The Rockefeller Republicans, bye-bye. But the point is, he's got a restive coalition. I mean, he is between a rock and a hard place, but a crisis like this does force him to choose. Yes,
it does, very much so. And that's why I think he's trying to avoid this fight. I think he wants Republicans to just do what he tells them to do, trust in his leadership, and step aside. And they're not willing to do that.
No. Ultimately, if I were Donald Trump, but see, Donald Trump doesn't know history. If I were Donald Trump, I'd launch a Night of the Long Knives and get rid of all the neocon assholes who are my problem. Don't kill them. Don't drag them out of their beds where they're sleeping with young boys and shoot them in the middle of the night, like happened in 1934.
Yes, and many of them were in bed with young boys when the knives came out.
Not making that up. Oh, looking at you, Ernst Röhm.
Ernst Röhm. Exactly.
But the thing is, ultimately you have to have a purge, right? If you have a restive coalition and you want to lead, you can't let them wag you. You've got to choose one side and whack the other side. There's no other way to rule.
That's it. And that's why the sociopaths are the ones who make it to the top, because they make it to the top on the backs of the people around them.
Yeah, they sure do. All right. I think I consider myself to have been sufficiently deprogrammed.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So we're going to be back here on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern time. Tomorrow's a national holiday, so happy Juneteenth to everybody. And please follow, subscribe. It makes all the difference for our show and for every other show here that you like on YouTube and Rumble. And also hi to people who are not watching but are just listening to the audio feed. We love you too. And thank you so much. We have one question here. I'll let John answer that before we go out about your book.
Thank you, Hans. You know what? It was supposed to come out again. It was supposed to come out next week. And I don't know what the delay is, but thanks for asking. I'm going to ask.
In the meantime, so you can always, can you pre-order the Graveyards book?
I went on yesterday on Amazon to see if it was open for pre-order yet, and it's not. And there's no explanation as to why. I don't know what's taking them so long.
Who knows? I blame Iran.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, thanks everyone for listening and watching, and we will see you soon. Thank you and take care.
Bye-bye.